Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She said it like she was giving herself permission to walk out of her own life. I need a break from you. No anger, no tears. Just calm detachment, the kind that hits harder than yelling ever could. She stood there in the kitchen, arms crossed, hair still wet from her shower, scrolling her phone like she was already halfway gone. I didn't argue, didn't ask why. I just looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. Then I said quietly, same. Forever works? That got her attention. Her head snapped up, eyes narrowing as if she couldn't process the words. I didn't explain. I just grabbed my keys, walked out, and closed the door behind me. We'd been married 6 years. I thought we were solid, real life solid, not Instagram solid. But lately, she'd been slipping away in small ways. Staying out late with coworkers, coming home smelling like a mix of perfume and guilt. Conversations turned into arguments, and arguments turned into silence. I kept thinking it was just stress, just a phase. Turns out, I was the only one still calling it a marriage. I drove for hours that night, nowhere in particular. Ended up at a Waffle House off the interstate. The same one we used to stop at after road trips, when things were simple. I sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, and stared at the empty seat beside me. The waitress asked if someone was joining me. I said no. She just nodded, like she'd heard that story before. By the time I got back home, the lights were off. Her car was gone. On the counter, she'd left a note. Don't make this harder than it has to be. No explanation. No apology. Just that. I didn't touch the note. Didn't call. Didn't text. I just sat on the couch, scrolling through old photos on my phone. Birthdays, vacations, her smile before it became performance. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being her person and started being her background. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was her mom. Missed call. Then another. I let them ring. Because the thing is, when someone says they need a break from you, they rarely mean it. What they really want is space where they're still in control. And this time, I was done giving it. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight cutting through the blinds and an empty side of the bed that didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Her stuff was still there. Hairbrush on the nightstand, half-empty bottle of perfume on the dresser, but the silence told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't coming back soon, maybe not at all. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at her note again. Don't make this harder than it has to be. The words echoed in my head, detached, sterile, like the ending of a meeting, not a marriage. By noon, her mom called again. I didn't answer. But when she left a voicemail, I listened. She sounded worried. She said she'd been trying to reach her daughter all night, but her phone was off. She asked if I knew where she was. I didn't. And the truth was, I didn't care. Not right then. I went about my day like a man reclaiming his time. Did laundry, cleaned the garage, took my Ford F-150 out for a drive. It felt strange, free, but not joyful. Like I was moving through air that had finally cleared after a storm. Around 4 p.m., her mom called again. This time, I picked up. She sounded frantic. She said, I don't know what's going on between you two, but she's not answering anyone. Please, just tell me she's okay. I told her I didn't know, that she said she needed a break, and I gave her one. Silence on the other end. Then her voice dropped. You shouldn't have. That night, I got another call, this time from one of her friends, the one she used to go out with. She said they were supposed to meet for lunch, but she never showed. I told her the same thing I told her mother. I don't know where she is. But the truth was, I had a feeling. A gut instinct that she wasn't alone, and that was the point. She wanted distance, not solitude. I didn't text, didn't ask. I just sat in the dark, thinking about how strange it is when people confuse control for freedom. They leave thinking they're finding themselves, only to realize too late, they were never lost. They just didn't like their reflection. Her mom called again that night. And this time, when I saw the number, I smiled. Because suddenly, I realized she was calling the wrong person. I wasn't the one she needed to reach anymore. By the third day, her mother was calling nonstop. Morning, afternoon, late at night. Each voicemail sounded more desperate than the last. She said she'd driven by our house, that her daughter's car wasn't at her apartment, and that she hadn't shown up for work either. She asked if I'd done something, if we'd fought. I didn't bother explaining that the fight wasn't one moment. It was a slow death stretched over months. I went about my day like normal. Work, gym, dinner at a small diner off Main. Ordered the same thing I always did, a black coffee and a plate of scrambled eggs. It wasn't about the food, it was about the quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't need to be earned anymore. When I got home, there were 2 missed calls from her mom and 1 from an unknown number. I didn't answer any of them. I poured myself a drink, sat on the back porch, and listened to the sound of the crickets. I thought about the night she said she needed a break, and how easy it had been for her to say it. Like pressing pause on a movie she'd lost interest in. But what she didn't realize was that some pauses turn permanent. Later that night, her mom showed up at my door. She looked exhausted, makeup smudged, hands trembling slightly as she asked if she could come in. I said yes. She walked in slowly, looking around like she was stepping into a crime scene, her eyes searching for answers that weren't there. She asked when I'd last spoken to her daughter. I told her exactly what happened, that she said she needed space, and I gave it to her. She shook her head like she couldn't believe it. You let her go? She asked. I said, she wasn't mine to keep. That answer broke something in her. I could see it in her eyes. She realized the control her daughter thought she had was never real, it was just borrowed. And now, that illusion had collapsed. Before she left, she said quietly, you might think you're free, but you'll regret this when she doesn't come back. When the door closed, I sat in the silence again. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Because sometimes walking away isn't loss, it's clarity. And if she really needed a break, I'd finally given her one worth keeping. Forever. Days turned into a week. The calls didn't stop. Her mom's number lit up my phone every morning before sunrise, again at noon, then late at night when the silence was loudest. I stopped answering altogether. What was there left to say? That her daughter didn't disappear? That she just chose to stop pretending? I started noticing things I hadn't seen in years. The quiet sound of the clock ticking in the living room. The smell of my own coffee instead of hers. The calm that came from knowing no one was about to start another argument. Freedom doesn't show up loud. It arrives like oxygen after suffocation. But her absence was getting attention. Mutual friends started messaging me, asking if everything was okay. One of them said she'd deleted her social media. Another said she'd been seen at a bar downtown a few nights ago, sitting alone, nursing a drink she didn't touch. That sounded like her. Dramatic silence, staged pain. She was always her own favorite audience. Then one evening, her mom showed up again. No warning, no text. She looked worse than last time, mascara smudged, eyes red. She didn't come inside this time. She just stood on the porch and asked, do you even care? I looked at her and said calmly, I cared until caring meant losing myself. She started to say something, but stopped. Maybe she finally saw the truth in my eyes, that I wasn't angry. I was done. After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time. The sun was going down, painting the sky with that fading gold that looks like closure. I thought about how strange it is when someone walks out of your life thinking they're teaching you a lesson, only to find out they were the one who needed it. A few nights later, I got a call from an unknown number again. I let it ring. Then a text followed. I made a mistake. No name, no explanation. But I knew. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, out of peace. Because when someone leaves to find themselves, it's not your job to wait while they do. Her mother called again the next morning. I didn't pick up. I just stared at the screen, smiled faintly, and whispered to myself. She wanted a break. She got one. And this time, it wasn't temporary. A few days passed before the next text came. Same number, same short message. Can we talk? I didn't reply. I deleted it and went on with my morning routine. Coffee, a jog, a stop at the Target down the street to grab a few things I actually needed. It was strange, realizing how easy life had become without her constant noise. That night, as I was finishing dinner, my phone rang again. Her mother. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted closure, not for her, but for myself. When I picked up, her voice was soft, tired. She said her daughter was staying with a friend. She's not doing well, she said. She thought you'd call. She thought you'd chase her. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, she mistook my silence for pride. It's not pride, it's peace. Her mother sighed, like she finally understood. Before hanging up, she said something that stayed with me. You were the only steady thing she ever had. She just didn't know it until it was gone. That night, I sat outside again, The same porch, same quiet street. But something felt different. It wasn't sadness, it was clarity. I thought about how she used to walk out mid-argument, expecting me to follow. How she'd test me, just to make sure I still cared. And I always did. Until I didn't. A week later, she called herself. First time since that night she left. I didn't pick up. She texted right after. I get it now. I didn't respond. Because the thing about realization, it always comes too late for people who take consistency for granted. The following morning, her mother called again, but this time it wasn't about her daughter's breakdown. She just wanted to thank me. She said, "I don't think you realize what your silence did." It's the only thing that's ever made her face herself. When we hung up, I stared at my reflection in the window. I didn't see anger or victory, just stillness. Sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do isn't to fight, or beg, or explain. It's to stop being available to someone who only appreciated his presence in his absence. She wanted a break from me. I gave her one big enough to grow in, or drown in. The choice was always hers. It was 2 weeks before I saw her again. I was leaving a diner after grabbing lunch when she pulled into the parking lot. Same car, same look, but something was different in her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, like confidence had finally run out. She stepped out slowly, hesitating before walking over. I didn't move. I just watched her. When she finally spoke, her voice wasn't sharp anymore. It was soft, almost trembling. She said she'd been trying to reach me, that she needed to talk, that she'd made a mistake. I didn't respond. Just crossed my arms and waited. She filled the silence herself. Said the break she wanted didn't give her peace. It gave her perspective. That she thought leaving would make her feel free, but instead it made her feel disposable. Her honesty hit different. For the first time, it didn't sound like manipulation. It sounded like surrender. Still, I wasn't sure if I believed her. So I said quietly, "You didn't need space from me. You needed space from your reflection." She didn't argue. Just nodded slowly, tears forming in her eyes. The same woman who once controlled every argument now couldn't find the right words to save herself. We stood there in silence for a while, the sound of cars passing filling the air between us. She finally said she wanted to come home. I told her I'd think about it. She looked shocked, like the idea that she no longer had control hadn't fully settled in yet. When I got home that night, her mom called again. This time, she wasn't frantic, she was quiet. She said her daughter had told her what happened, and she thanked me for not humiliating her. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "Sometimes the only way to teach someone love is to stop giving it away for free." That line stayed with me all night. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone, reading the text she'd sent after we met. "I miss who we were." I typed a response, then deleted it. I wasn't ready to go backward. Because the truth was simple, I didn't hate her. I didn't even resent her anymore. I just didn't need her the way I used to. She wanted a break. And in the silence that followed, I learned something she never could. You can't rebuild something that never had a foundation. A few nights later, I got a knock on the door. It was her. No warning, no text, just her standing there in the same sweatshirt she used to steal from me, holding a small box in her hands. She said she came to return a few things I'd left at her place. I could tell from her face that wasn't the real reason she was there. I let her in. The air felt heavy, like the house itself remembered everything we'd said and done inside it. She walked around slowly, looking at the furniture, the pictures, the life she'd stepped away from. Then she turned to me and said she didn't realize how easy it was to destroy something that took years to build. I didn't say anything. She handed me the box. It had a few shirts, my old watch, and a photo of us from a trip we took years ago. She stared at the photo for a moment before whispering, "I thought we were unbreakable." I finally spoke. "You can't test something forever and expect it not to crack." She didn't argue, just stood there in silence. The kind that doesn't beg for attention, it just admits defeat. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. "Is it too late?" I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Too late for what? To start over, or to appreciate what's gone? She blinked, trying to hold back tears. I could see the weight of her decisions settling in. I told her I wasn't angry, that I wasn't trying to punish her. I just didn't have anything left to give. I said I'd spent too long apologizing for things I didn't break and carrying weight that wasn't mine. She nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I didn't think you'd actually move on," she said quietly. I told her the truth. Neither did I. until I had to. She left soon after, without another word. I stood by the window, watching her taillights disappear down the street. Her mother called the next morning, asking if she'd been there. I said yes. She paused, then said, "She's finally starting to understand." Maybe she was. But understanding doesn't undo damage. It just makes it visible. And sometimes, that's worse. After that night, she stopped showing up, but her mother didn't. Every few days, I'd get a call or a message. Sometimes she wanted to check if her daughter had reached out. Sometimes she just wanted to talk. She'd say things like, "She's not herself," or "She cries all the time now." And every time, I'd answer with the same quiet honesty. That's what happens when someone realizes peace doesn't wait around. A week later, her mother called again. This time, she didn't sound worried, just sad. She said her daughter had moved back in with her for a while. "She's quieter now," she said. "Keeps saying you stopped caring." I told her that wasn't true. I didn't stop caring. I just stopped chasing. There's a difference. That night, I sat in the living room, staring at the framed photo she'd left in the box. We looked happy in it, genuinely happy. The kind of happiness that fools you into thinking it'll last forever. I remembered that day vividly. The road trip, the music, the small arguments that felt harmless then but were warnings in disguise. You don't see the cracks when you're too busy pretending they're shadows. A few days later, she texted again. Just one line, "I miss being home." I didn't reply, because home isn't a place you return to. It's something you protect while you still have it. Her mother called that evening, saying her daughter had stopped eating, stopped talking. I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Then she said something that hit harder than I expected. "She keeps asking if you'll ever forgive her." I didn't know how to answer that. Forgiveness wasn't the problem anymore. The problem was trust, and once it breaks, it doesn't heal, it hardens. Later that night, I went for a drive. Past the Target we used to shop at, the little coffee shop where she'd order the same caramel latte every morning. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. I realized then that I didn't miss her. I missed who I was before I started walking on eggshells. By the time I got home, it was almost midnight. My phone buzzed again, her mom. This time, the message was short. "She's starting therapy tomorrow. Thank you." I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen and thought to myself, sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the silence they created. That's how real change starts, with the echoes of their own choices. It had been nearly 2 months since she left, and life had finally settled into something steady. Work, gym, quiet nights, early mornings. I didn't think about her much anymore, except when her mother called, which was still almost every day. Sometimes she just wanted to hear a calm voice. Other times she'd tell me updates I didn't ask for. "She's doing better," she'd say. "The therapy's helping." Then she'd pause and add, "But she still talks about you." I never knew what to say to that. What was I supposed to feel? Guilt? Nostalgia? Maybe once I would have. But now, it all felt distant, like she was talking about someone else's life. One night, after weeks of silence, she texted again. It was late, almost midnight. The message said, "I understand now why you stopped calling. You were done before I even left." I stared at the screen for a long time before turning it off. She was right. I'd stopped being her husband long before she stopped being my wife. A few days later, her mother called again. This time, she sounded lighter, almost relieved. She said her daughter had started going out again, seeing friends, even smiling a little. Then she said something that caught me off guard. She told me she wants to apologize face to face. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Sometimes an apology isn't about hearing sorry. It's about knowing they finally see it." She sighed softly and said, "She sees it. Trust me, she does." That evening, I found myself driving without direction again. Ended up at that same Waffle House I'd gone to the night she left. Same seat, same coffee, same waitress who still didn't ask questions. I watched people come and go, couples laughing, truckers passing through, strangers living lives that didn't cross mine. And for the first time, I realized I didn't need closure. I already had it. As I left, I saw a text come through from her mother. "She wants to see you tomorrow. Just to talk." I didn't respond right away. I sat in my car, engine off, thinking about how quiet peace really is. It doesn't announce itself. It just settles in one day and replaces everything you used to fight for. Maybe I'd meet her. Maybe not. But one thing was certain. She asked for a break. and I gave her one that changed us both forever. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The air felt still, like the world hadn't decided what kind of day it wanted to be yet. I sat at the table with my coffee, staring out the window, thinking about that message. She wants to see you tomorrow. Just to talk. I didn't answer it last night. I wasn't sure if I should. Part of me wanted to keep moving forward, untouched, unread. But another part, the quiet one that still remembered her laugh before it turned bitter, told me that maybe this was how the story was supposed to end. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. Just with truth. By noon, I decided I'd meet her. Not for her, but for me. To close the door properly this time. We met at a small coffee shop near her mother's neighborhood. I got there early and took a seat by the window. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. There was no pretense left, no polished front. Just a woman who'd finally stopped performing for the world. She sat down across from me, quiet at first. Then she said she'd spent weeks thinking about everything. About the break, about why she'd needed it. She said she thought she was running from me, but she'd been running from herself the entire time. Her voice shook when she said, "I thought you'd chase me. I thought I could control the distance." I didn't say anything for a while. Then I told her, "You can't control someone who's done explaining." She nodded, eyes glossy but calm. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at her, really looked, and realized I wasn't angry anymore. There was no point. She'd already lost the one thing she never valued until it was gone, my peace. We talked for a while, about simple things, about nothing. When she stood to leave, she hesitated, as if waiting for me to ask her to stay. I didn't. I just smiled faintly and said, "Take care of yourself." She nodded, and for the first time, there was no drama in her eyes. Just acceptance. That night, her mother called again. Her voice sounded lighter than ever. "Thank you," she said quietly. I hung up and sat in the dark, the quiet settling like closure. She once said, "I need a break from you." I said same. Forever works? Now her mother calls me every day, not because she wants her daughter back, but because she knows peace finally found the right home. Been through it. When they crossed a line, and you made sure they felt it.